Trent Cotney and John Kenney are dedicated to helping the construction industry with legal business and safety challenges. Welcome to this week's episode of Law and Mortar.
Hey, this is Trent Cotney. I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Law and Mortar. It's a special episode today. As always, I've got John Kenney with me. John, how are you doing?
Doing great. Looking forward to this special episode. It's definitely going to be a hot topic.
Yeah, so earlier today, I went into my phone on my ChatGPT app and I said, what should we discuss that would be cutting edge in the next episode of Law and Mortar? And it responded that we should talk about AI. And I thought that was ironic given that it was ChatGPT. So we are going to dedicate this entire episode to artificial intelligence, what it means for roofing and construction. We're going to talk about the business side of it and the legal side of it. And I guess, John, let's start off with you. What are you seeing? What do you see that's being implemented right now? And where do you think we are going with this?
Well, I think right now it is a new toy. It's got pretty much kind of released to the masses, and I think you've got Chat GPT was the first one to kind of hit that market and get everybody involved. And Google and Bing, they all got one coming. Bing's got one coming behind, and Google's working on some stuff I saw on television. And the person that warned us on AI that said we should take a pause, now is starting his own AI company, SpaceX, Mr. Elon Musk, which is no surprise to me. It's a big thing he's into. So now we've got many players jumping in. So what I see so far is I think it's a novelty. It's more of a toy. I think it's kind of fun, but it does have ramifications that go well beyond that. I think positive for businesses, and I think negatives. And I know you're going to look at it from the legal side, which I'm sure has got to be kind of like the first time we had to deal with space rockets going up and how you would handle that from the legal market. This has got to be a whole new field. So just kind of like my overview, I think what I see of it so far, I've been using around. I think I think people that think they're going to all of a sudden be able to go and become writing wizards and papers and all that, I think you're mistaken. It's still not going to pick up anybody's personal writing style. I think it has advantages for research. I think it's going to be great to use for research, and then it's got to be adapted into business usage. So what I see for business usage is it work really well. I think it's going to be great for analytics. I think it's going to be fantastic for getting out there and do projections and looking into the future as far as company running off of your data. I think that's going to serve well. I think you're going to see AI work very well in the risk management field for construction. I think it's going to be able to run different scenarios and give you that way of looking at it. I caution on the side. I think it's also good I think you're going to see it come into estimating. So before I get to caution, why I see it coming into estimating, I think it's going to be able to take your historical data and give you a lot of good outcomes based upon the information you put into it. But it is not still going to replace the human factor of an estimator with knowledge at the end to finally decide which is the best path to take. So what I do see now is more advertisements of everything being run or getting ready to run on AI, leads, proposals, sales tactics. And that's where I would caution anybody in the construction field as this stuff comes out. Please do your homework, because I'm not sure everything's going to work exactly the way you think it is. And I would say we're still a few years away from this being refined to really what it could do the best for our industry. That's kind of my first overview.
So where do you see this being implemented first? I mean, I think probably marketing. I mean, it seems to me that, it lends itself almost immediately to that. I encourage everybody, regardless of whether you want to use it or not, it's a tool that I think is going to dominate how we communicate with each other in the future. So I'd encourage everybody to start working on it. Like I've noticed that just since I've been playing with it, it reminds me of DOS, right? You have to input data, and the more complex that you get with your input, the more of a hand-tailored type of response that you
Right.
get. I also think that what we're seeing now with Chat GPT and OpenAI is a precursor to what will be a much more user-friendly, integrated desktop type experience with Google and Bing. You know, I really think we're going to see some of that. But I'm curious, John, do you think roofing contractors and other contractors out there will be able to terminate their marketing departments here shortly if this gets to the point where it starts, being able to channel and write copy for social media and that kind of stuff?
I mean, can it? Yeah, absolutely it could. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, I still think they're a little bit away from that because they haven't refined it enough, but I think you're going to see some pretty wild paid, fully paid subscription type versions that are going to hook up to your CRMs, and it's going to be able to pull some of your patterns out and find what your strengths are and tailor your marketing efforts towards that. Yeah, I see that absolutely coming through. I think, like I said, I think you're right about that. I think you're going to see it change social media. I think you're going to see it change even the Google searches. And I think that's why Google is rushing to get their own out there to market, because I don't think you're going to see the SEO and the pay-per-click and that type of to be as influent as it is now. I think right away, but will tell you one thing to be careful on. They are your plagiarism check softwares that are out there. They are already developing checks to know if it's pure AI. So there's going to be software out there, and I'm pretty sure your social media or at least your search, replace SEO. What I'm trying to say here, I think they're going to have ways of knowing it came purely out of AI, and they're probably going to block that. And I've heard they're already working on those things, but yeah, I mean, I gotta admit, I've been playing around with it too. And if you put some deep dive research stuff in there and you get really down and I want to find something out about a mix between products or something, it gives you pretty decent information back, because you can fact check it and it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, right? And that it was written by AI. And I think right now we're still a ways off. Like, I still think, to get back to the marketing example, you still need the oversight, the messaging. It's not fully integrated. It is, a precursor to what I could see ultimately taking over sales departments, ultimately taking over, even estimating to a certain extent. I could see that it could take over a lot of different aspects. I get asked all the time, when is AI going to take over the practice of law? And it's interesting because I've plugged in very specific, legal questions, and we just had a conference here within the firm about it. And it's surprising you get very confident, definitive answers that are about 75% correct. There's usually a nugget or two that is wrong, and occasionally there's a false statement. What's also interesting, you talked about plagiarism, right? So the plagiarism checkers in and of themselves, as they are now, it's difficult to tell that it was sourced from there. What I'm concerned about is what happens if two people enter the same query into AI and they get the same response and publish the same stuff. So I could see it being used for, basic stuff, but thought leadership content, I think, I would caution anybody for using it in lieu of writing your own material, because I think there's that risk that someone could enter the same exact thing, and then, it comes out that you're not the one writing it. It raises a bunch of, ethical and moral issues. It raises obviously a lot of legal issues. There's everything from, I was looking into it the other day about creating policies for, employee usage for contractors, because you don't want to be in a situation where you unintentionally plagiarize something. If you've got a sales or a marketing person that's not writing their own stuff and is using that, you've got everything from, unintended bias to, potential intellectual property violations, all these confidentiality, all this other stuff that you've really got to think about. It really kind of blows your mind. And John, what strikes me about this is an evolutionary leap in technology, right? This is like when the first iPhone came out or when the internet came out. It reminds me of that. It is, if for those of you that are listening to this, if you haven't toyed or played with this, you need to, because it blew my mind how intuitive and how realistic it was. And here's a great example. You can go in and you could say, write me an article on the use of Chat GPT. Write it from the perspective of a professor in college. Write it between 1,000 and 1,500 words. Make sure to include examples, and it will do all of that, right? It will have all of that in there, and it's fascinating to me how that works. Like, my mind can't comprehend how that works in the background, but it is, to me, this is an evolutionary technology. Do you kind of see the same thing, John?
No, I do. I think what I see it doing, it's going out, and it's not a search engine. That's where a lot of people get confused. It's absolutely, if you put in "find me this," it'll kick you back. We're not a search engine. It'll give you a message like that, which is kind of unique. I thought that was interesting because, again, I've been kind of playing around with it too. But what you said was a good, valid point. The deeper your requirements are to get information back, it seems to be the better the AI does. And also, I think that's the way it was programmed, and that's how it's deep learning. I think it wants people to do that, so it picks up on different things. I do agree with you on the thought leadership. Anybody out there that's looking at this to be able to write a paper or write something, you really should know your topic, because you're right. It's 75%. Some of it might be 60. You're going to get something that really sounds good, but somebody will call bull if they really know that subject. So if you're a roofer today, or you're working in a diner or whatever it may be, don't think you're going to be a scientist tomorrow or putting out a public paper. It's just not going to work. Where I do think this is kind of like the space age, right? This is like the 60s of AI, right? We've now gone from talking about it to now having it. So the first moon landing kind of happened. We're flying around it. But I have no clue where this is going to actually launch. New industries that we don't even dream about today are going to come out of this. There's just no doubt about it. Me personally, I'll share my opinion. I'm less worried about the evil that they're talking about than I am the good this will do. And the reason I say that is because the people that are evil out there doing evil things are going to continue to do evil things regardless. So I think we have to have our checks and balances in no matter what. I don't think this is going to automatically overnight create evil that we don't know about already. Let's face it, our enemies in different countries, they're still going to be our enemies, and they're still going to pump out propaganda, and they're still going to keep on doing it. But I like what you brought up about, you got 75% on your legal questions. I think that's another area you're going to see this attack first, as far as companies. Review your contracts, put your policies in, whatever it may be, do away, like you got, added doctors and finding, that's where it's going to all probably go. And again, I'm not an attorney, you are, but as a non-attorney, I always caution on that. It may be great for initial, like I'd love to see it for scope reviews. I think it'd be a fantastic for going through the basic documents and putting some parameters in there and saying, hey, scan through this and find me everything it mentions about safety setup, so you don't have to spend the time reading through it. I think that's great, but I certainly wouldn't trust it to say, make sure my lien rights are protected based upon something.
Well, that's a great point. I think the same thing holds true with estimating. If it ever gets to the point where it's doing that, it reminds me, like just like you shouldn't rely 100% on satellite imagery, you shouldn't, or pictometry, you shouldn't rely 100% on a program. There's nothing that replaces being able to see stuff in person and using that real experience, not, fake computer experience to make sure that your bids are correct. So, John, it's interesting that you mentioned the evil side of it, because that actually brings me to the favorite part of your day, which is the question. So,
all right,
I set this one aside because I knew we were having a specific one on AI, and this question is from Brandon. Brandon's question is, with the emergence of AI, how long will it be before we turn into a culture like the Terminator? So I thought, and I think what he means by that is in that movie, The Terminator, they, that it became sentient and then decided it was going to blow up humanity and, apocalypse, that kind of stuff. So I'll let you answer that first, John, and then I'll tag off it.
Well, really, to be perfectly honest, I have no clue. I mean, if I could project that out, well, I'll tell you what, I'd be signing up for a lot higher field than what I'm in right now. But the interesting part about it is I still have certain faith in our humanity that if as fast as it's just like the plagiarism part, as fast as everybody's worried about college papers being written and getting by the teachers, the college board's already got a plagiarism check to specifically look and see if it came out of an AI type of a script. So is it perfect? No. So I'm pretty sure if we've got, hopefully there's safeguards that if the AI is telling to fire all the nuclear weapons, that there's another AI out there that's looking for that and saying, hey, well, let's take a timeout before we launch, something like that. I think that's the question you're asking. But who knows? Like I said, I think we're in uncharted waters right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, harking back to, college days, there was a book that I read. It was by Jacques Ellul, The Technological Society. And in that book, he talks about the fact that technology ultimately grows at a pace that is beyond our ability to control it. And I think that's what Elon Musk said before he decided he would do the same thing, and so I'm curious, thinking big picture, what does this mean for the human race? If you think about it, they don't even teach cursive anymore. Like, you and I grew up on learn how to write cursive and using it, and it's not even a thing. Calculators like the one I got here, nobody uses those anymore. They use their phone, or they, talk it into the whatever device they've got. What will our role be in the future? It's very interesting to kind of think about this. And that's why I encourage our listeners to, don't shun the technology, embrace it so that at least you got your thumb on it. That's, I think the contractors out there that are figuring out how to utilize it, how to not become irrelevant, are going to be the ones that are ultimately successful. But really gets those wheels turning, John. I tell you, I'm glad we devoted an episode of this, because I like thinking about this kind of stuff. It's crazy.
It is, definitely. And like I said, it's uncharted, but I agree with you. I just want to tag back onto that. Don't be scared of experimenting and learning about it, because it's like anything else. Go back through any part of history. When one sector of the workforce disappears, there's 2 or 3 more that open up. There's going to be industries that are going to come from this that we don't even know exist yet or could exist.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the robot lawyer that can go into work for me so I can, stay at home and go fishing.
That would be nice, but I think we're a ways off from seeing that happening for all of us.
Damn. All right. Well, John, as always, I thank you. I want to thank our loyal listeners for making us #1 construction law podcast in the world. Stay tuned next week for another episode of Law and Mortar. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach me. I am Trent Cotney at trent.cotney@arlaw.com. John, how can they get you?
It's J. Kenney at CotneyConsulting.com.
Great. Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.
Bye now.